Hello everybody. Today we are talking about the difference between the ideas of acceptance and tolerance. Many of us use the phrase, "This is unacceptable," and embedded in that phrase is a certain level of acceptance. There's an acceptance of a standard. There's an acceptance of what's actually happening. And that's the kind of acceptance I'm talking about. If we live on the North Pole, we might only see the sun only 6 months out of the year. We don't have the same experience of the sun as anyone on the equator, and yet there is an acceptance of the sun and its properties and how it impacts the world and people and environments and cultures and climates. That's the kind of acceptance I'm talking about. It's not to say that someone on the North Pole is going to agree with everything the sun is capable of doing as somebody on the equator, but there is a general level of acceptance. What acceptance does is it takes away this need to blame and shame. So in the context of the racial tensions, racial bias, racial inequity and injustice, we need to accept that there's something embedded in our systems, in our culture, because of our history, because of how systems were built and policies were put in place. There are inequities and injustices baked into the system, and we need to accept that. Once we have that level of acceptance, again, not necessarily agreeing on every single thing, but acceptance allows us to put away shame and blame. Most of what we see happening in the media is this conflict. Who's to blame? Who is defensive because they don't want to be blamed? We need to put that aside. The main thing is, how do we move forward? And the only way forward is to have a certain level of acceptance that this exists and it impacts all of us. What that opens up the door for is to understand at what level will we tolerate what we are coming to understand. What acceptance does is it allows us to exhale, release this need to be on edge and to fight, but that's not what happened, but that's what happened. Release that and to be able to say, what do I not understand about this? It opens up the space of curiosity. And curiosity then allows us to see things we might never have seen before, which opens up empathy and compassion and a level of initiative to do something different. And that's where tolerance comes into play. When we say things like, "This is not acceptable," what we're saying is, at this point, in this moment, this is where my tolerance level has reached a point where I need to do something different. So we need acceptance, the acceptance that this is what is. On some level, we all just have to accept these racial inequities, injustices, this bias, experience bias, familiarity bias, about a dozen other types of biases that we all are impacted by. And at some level, we accept that that's true. And that allows us to see things in a way where our tolerance level is what's pressed up against and not our defense level. And when we can no longer tolerate something, that's when we get to work to see what can we be doing differently. Thank you.